Hello and welcome back. This is Don't Watch at Night, a spooky little podcast dedicated to Latin American horror and Spanish language horror. I'm your host, Valerie, and Veronica and I are currently out on break right now. We're out taking our annual month, June, off to be with our families and kind of have a little bit of a summer vacation before we come back to you later in the summer and have a bunch of new fun content for you. So today we're bringing you something a little bit different. If you are part of our Patreon, then you have been privy to many a creepy cocktail hour over, a little over a year now that we've been doing those. Quite a few of them make their way over to YouTube as well, but every single one, without fail, makes its way to Patreon. It is for our Patreon subscribers, the people who are wonderful and have been with us, many of whom have been with us since the very, very beginning of the show. Today, I am bringing you a creepy cocktail hour. I believe it's creepy cocktail hour number 5, and it was recorded about this time last summer. And it's where I delivered my ode to summer camp horror, one of my favorite pockets of summer horror. I went on and on and on about this. I brought a lot of resources to the table. Generally, ahead of every Creepy Cocktail Hour, I will send our Patreon subscribers all of the resources that I use in the chat. I'll send them drink recipes because I always make a cocktail at the beginning of every chat. What you get at book club episodes, it's a little bit of that, except it's just me. Veronica doesn't generally join in on the Creepy Cocktail Hours. It's primarily a me thing. The resources that I used for this particular chat on summer camp horror, I will make sure to list again in our show notes so that you have them. Quite a bit of it I pulled from this fantastic article from atlasobscura.com that was written by Gavia Baker Whitelaw. That article was published in June of 2024. I also shared some wonderful information from an article that came out of The Guardian, written by Elena Shepard, and that article came out in April of 2022, as well as a bunch of other different great articles to look at, and our drink recipe from imbibemagazine.com. So all of that will be made available for you again in this little fun episode we're sharing with you for June to kind of help ring in summer. So here, take a listen to our Creepy Cocktail Hour number 5 from summer of 2025. Enjoy. Welcome. Hi. You are at the Don't Watch at Night Creepy Cocktail Hour number 5. I'm Valerie. I'm one half of the hosting team for Don't Watch at Night, which is a spooky little podcast dedicated to lifting up Spanish language horror and Latin American horror. We are about to hit our second anniversary, entering year 3. I think I've been saying on our promos that we've been doing on our episodes lately, I've been saying entering year 2. That's a lot. That's me not knowing how to do math. We're entering year 3. And so that's exciting. Veronica is my co-host. Veronica is also my sister. So it's been exciting. It's been really rewarding to do this show with her. And we're really happy that we've been able to continue doing it. And so you're here. Creepy Cocktail Hour. I do want to remind you guys up top that we do have a brand new episode on the podcast this week. If you haven't tuned in yet, you can find us over on Spotify or wherever you tune into podcasts, including YouTube. We are talking this week about 1977's Suspiria. Super fun movie. Revisiting the clips from that movie this week. Again, just can't get over the brilliant use of color, the amazing set design. I said this on the episode, and I want to say it again here too. If you've seen it, if you love it as much as a lot of people do, then you know that there are just certain scenes that to me just look like you're staring at a piece of art, including that first fantastic death scene at the start of Suspiria. So yeah, go listen to that episode if you haven't. And then the other thing I want to make sure you know, 2 things actually. I want to make sure you guys know that going into June, Veronica and I typically take the month of June off. So you are going to still be getting podcast episodes. They're going to be kind of best of compilation episodes, which are really great, especially if you're like needing to catch up on episodes, or if you want to bring people into the fold and get them to listen and try out our podcast. then these are great episodes to listen to. And June is a great episode to catch up on what we have in our catalog so far. So we'll be out for June, and then we come back in July with new movie discussion and then also book club discussion. So the summer reading that we've chosen for Don't Watch at Night is Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. We're going to be discussing that at the end of July. That'll be second episode of July. So get that book if you haven't read it yet. It's been out for a while. If you have read it, great, you're ready. If you want to reread it, whatever. If you join our Patreon, we'll be sure to link that for you guys after this. Okay, so let's get to the cocktail. I'm so happy to be doing this in front of my fridge because I don't have to worry about ice melting while I'm chatting. So this cocktail is going to be an interesting one because this was really born out of the fact that like my cupboards be bare this week. We just don't have a whole lot of stuff stocked right now and haven't had a chance to restock stuff. So I was really scrambling to go through what we did have and see what I could pull together. It's some pickings, and we're going to see what this turns out to be. And if it's awful, that's my bad. But hopefully if you are imbibing, hopefully you're drinking a beverage of your choice, of your preference. So what I'm doing today is kind of a riff on something called the Bijou or Bijou. I want to say Bijou cocktail, the Bijou, whatever. So the Bijou cocktail traditionally, it was invented by Harry Johnson. I want to first preface, invented by Harry Johnson, who I think is like seen as like the king of bartending, ushered in a movement of bartending. That cocktail calls for gin, sweet vermouth, and green chartreuse. What we are doing today is what Imbibe Magazine, where I pulled this from, imbibemagazine.com, calls the Golden Ghost, which I was going to say Golden Goose, but cool name for a cocktail. It calls for 3/4 ounce mezcal, 3/4 ounce Blanco tequila, and 3/4 ounce creme de cacao, along with 3/4 ounce Genepe, don't know, but this is the bottle. I think I've pulled this out in various videos before. I don't know if I've done it for a cocktail hour. Anyway, I always have stuff like this in my bar. Sorry, if I'm distracted, it's because I'm trying to like read stuff at the same time as run a live stream. I always have that on my bar. It's a good thing to go in all kinds of different cocktails. So it's a good one to keep. Has a little bit of sweetness to it. Citrusy, maybe. I don't know how to describe it. Then, I can't remember if I said this already, but dash of orange bitters. So, and then you throw that all into a shaker, shake it up, strain it, garnish with a star anise, which I don't have. I also don't have Blanco tequila. When I'm talking about like bare bones, I am working with what I've got. I don't have Blanco tequila on hand right now. But I do have mezcal. I have the mezcal that I always have. This is what we use. Again, this has also been featured on Don't Watch at Night episodes, probably on a cocktail hour or two. So we have that. So I'm just going to have to work with that as the primary base spirit and hope that this still comes out good. I have my shaker. So I'm going to do, since I don't have that 3/4 ounce tequila, I'm just rolling that into the mezcal. I'm going to do 1.5 ounces of mezcal. I have all of my ingredients pre-measured out. I've already done the orange bitters. Let me go ahead and get ice in my shaker. There we go. Okay. I have 1.5 ounces of the mezcal. And then I have 3/4 ounce creme de cacao. And it says white creme de cacao. I don't know what that means. White chocolate. I don't know what that means, but I have creme de cacao and it's clear. So it's cocktail experimentation up in here. If it tastes awful, that's on me. Then we have the 3/4 ounce Genepe. It's Dolan. Dolan is the maker. So just look for this. Look for this. You can find this at Total Wine or at most liquor stores. God, if I drop a bottle, I'm like gonna freak out. And if you notice, it's got a little bit of color to it. So the creme de cacao was clear. This is kind of got a yellowish hue. So everything's in here. Ice is in there. And so now I'm going to do my shake. And I like to give it a nice good chill till like you have a little bit of frost here on the outside, right? Here we go. I like that this is called the Golden Ghost. If I knew any campfire ghost stories, I would maybe now would be the time to talk about them, but I actually didn't think to even check that out until just now. So that would have made a good addition to our little cocktail hour. Okay. We kind of have some frost forming, but my hands are too numb for me to bother with it. So because I'm in front of the fridge, I'm able to do a chilled glass, which I prefer. It doesn't specifically call for that, but I prefer that. So here we go. All right, see, I love that frost. And I'm straining this in. So I don't know that you could even call this a golden ghost because it is quite incomplete. Maybe I just call this the gray ghost. I don't know. It's pretty clear. Looks pretty clear. If I had a little star anise, that would be a nice addition in this, but I don't. So cheers. Happy Friday. Enjoy. Let's see what this tastes like. It's actually really good. That's actually really good. I was thinking that was going to be garbage, but that's actually really tasty. You get that little, obviously smoky mezcal profile, but the creme de cow adds that sweetness that blends perfectly with that smokiness. I imagine if I had a Blanco tequila, that would even balance out the flavor profile even better. And then that Dolan Genepi, again, it's an herbal liqueur, and it offers a little bit of sweetness in its own right that balances really well with the creme de cow. So it was really tasty. It doesn't suck. Look at that. Ah, what a relief. I was like, God, I'm going to have to be drinking garbage for the hour that I'm doing my live stream. Yeah, that's good. That's good. You know what I have learned, if I may, if you'll humor me to talk a little bit about this. We don't get sponsors, but if we did, like, this is such a good middle of the road mezcal, and I have done so many good drinks with this. I'm very interested in smoky mezcals. I haven't had a chance to try many. So if you know of some, please share. But this is one that I've tried and really liked, and I keep coming back to it because I really like it and because I don't know what else to try. So if you haven't given this a try, be on the lookout for it because I've incorporated this into so many I've done a Oaxacan old fashioned with this. There's a cocktail that we did for a book club episode, Vampires del Norte. Or was it Vampires of El Norte? Yeah, I think it was Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. And I did a cocktail called the Vaquero, and I incorporated this into it. It's really good. And this is surprisingly tasty. This modified riff on Golden Ghost, which is a modified riff on the Beaujolais. And it's kind of necessary to come up with modifications because I think like the Beaujolais, which calls for green chartreuse, I think green chartreuse is getting harder and harder to source right now. So that Dolan's Genepi stuff can be a useful substitute for that. I've read and I've used. Good, we did it. Hello. So now we can get to our topic at hand. I have prepared 9 pages worth of information because this is such a favorite. Summer camp horror is the best in this essay. Our topic today, summer camp horror, has always been one of my favorite offshoots of the broader genre. And I suspect that it's because my young childhood, like my formative first 10 years of life, took place in giving it away here. I was born in 82, was in elementary school all throughout the 80s. Those are my, I guess you call them tender years. And so it has a special place in my heart. And I'm interested to know, as I was writing out my notes for today, I was interested to know if you're a child of like the 60s or 70s or even the 90s, do you find yourself more partial to the horror films of that era or no? Because like I said, I have a soft spot for 80s horror, as I know a lot of people do, particularly people in Veronica's demographic and people who, like me, we're kind of elder millennials. We're kind of right there on the cusp. There are definitely younger people in the millennial bracket that are way younger than me and into way different things than I'm into. But, me being on the elder millennial side of things, I still gravitate towards a lot of 80s stuff. And so do a lot of people in my age bracket. I know that certainly people in Ronnie's age bracket who would have been teenagers during the 80s obviously gravitate towards 80s horror films, as they should. I mean, I would too. So I'm just curious to know. Let me know what horror era your young childhood years took place in, and are you more partial to the films of that time because of that? Do you have a special space in your heart for those movies because of that? I'm curious to know. And I'm curious to know if like I'm the only one who just bizarrely, it's like I bizarrely relate to these movies about teenagers in the 80s, even though I was like 7, like I wasn't doing anything even remotely what they were doing, but I thought they were cool and I wanted to be like them. And so, yeah, I just, in my brain, those movies are it. And Veronica, if she were listening or watching or part of this, she would absolutely agree with me. She's like, 80s horror is the best. I came across a lot of fun reads related to summer camps and what makes them such a fun, useful setting for horror. There's this really great read. And by the way, if you're part of our Patreon, then you get all of these resources that I pull information from. You get it all ahead of time. So you got the resources that I'm going to be pulling from today. You also got the cocktail recipe that I worked off of today. And then I just told you all the modifications I had to make. Again, another reason to join Patreon. It's free to join and you get access to this stuff. It's just me and Veronica just shooting you this information all day long because we love this stuff and we want people to nerd out with us to it. Yeah, great read over at atlasobscura.com that you received called Why Are So Many Horror Movies Set at Summer Camp? And it starts off by setting up a little bit of the scene for films like Friday the 13th, obviously, which is notable because as we are about to come up on what is June, we have on the calendar this year in June a Friday the 13th. And actually, I did not realize this until like last month that Veronica and I and our families, we take a camping trip every year. We go to these cabins up in like Central Texas, Hill Country, Texas. And it's not roughing it by any means. It's like camping with AC. And so we're going to be at these cabins. And it's this fun little campground where like all the cabins are nestled together as a summer camp would be. And we're going to be there on Friday the 13th. That's so much fun. And if we don't come back, you'll know why. So fun to bring up. And what the article says is we start to see summer camp horror, part of the American slasher genre, really take off post 1968. And that coincides with the end of the Hays Code censorship era. Not long after that, we get movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas, both of which came out in 1974. And while summer camp franchises like Friday the 13th will see wild success in the 80s, a lot of slasher movies that came out in the 80s saw wild success. Critically speaking, they didn't get a ton of love at that time. They were frequently criticized for being exploitative and misogynistic. Those critiques aren't wrong, I would say. Siskel and Ebert voiced their discontent with these films, though they have obviously retained a broad fan base amongst horror fans across generations now. So, I mean, there are kids younger than me that have grown up knowing the Friday the 13th films, the Halloween films, because those are films that continued well on. There were like 11 Friday the 13th? I don't even know how many Halloweens. So what's the appeal? Hang on. Before let me take a sip of my beverage, of my surprisingly good beverage. So what is the appeal? Why do we love these films so much? And childhood nostalgia aside, what is it that that makes them so much fun and I don't want to say feel good, but easy viewing for fans of horror? It mentioned in the piece, Atlas Obscura piece, there is a film critic, Jonathan Kenneth Muir, who is also the author of Horror Films of the 1980s, who says, for one thing, it's a secluded setting. You want that isolation, he says. You want your characters separated from mainstream society. At the same time, you want them close enough to mainstream society and like civilization nearby that it is conceivable and plausible that they would be able to go and get help or go and get away. Quoting directly from the article now, I'm pulling a lot of information from it, but this is direct quote. Campfire stories provide a built-in expository device to introduce the villain, and the camp counselors supply a ready-made cast of scantily clad young victims. And as Muir points out, the location is littered with convenient weapons. He says, you've got the archery contest. You have things like canoes and oars to separate people even further from the center of the action. So historian Leslie Paris, this is again pulling from the article, historian Leslie Paris, author of Children's Nature, The Rise of the American Summer Camp, reminds us that the first sleepaway camps appeared in the late 19th century, and they were primarily catered to male youth. And important to note, privileged male youth. It was male youth of means. So from the article, this sort of aligned with the tenets of, this is in caps, muscular Christianity, which associated masculinity and fitness with spiritual purity. These early camps tackled a growing concern that elite boys were growing soft in cities like New York and Boston, and an experience of rugged outdoor adventure would whip them into shape. Isn't it funny how time repeats itself? Over the next few decades, camps began catering to a wider range of demographics, introducing city kids to nature in a controlled environment. So you can read that and immediately be like, baby, the horse scenario is right there, jumping off the page. Hello. Even given that, like I said, we can read this and immediately pick up on the creepy factor, pick up on the potentially scary elements about something like that. The article also talked about how initially summer camp movies prior to the 80s weren't geared towards conjuring up, feelings of fear at all. There were a lot of comedic and romantic elements to camp movies pre-1980s. John Kenneth Muir, the author, again, sees summer camp horror as a product of the Reagan era of the 80s, representing a reassertion of conservative values and Old Testament draconian beliefs. The paradigm of these films is really vice precedes slice and dice. So, like, for example, don't have sex. Well, these teens go and have sex. And then immediately what happens? They get dead. Highlighting summer camp's reputation as a place of sexual awakening. It makes sense for these teen characters to hook up, smoke weed, but as soon as they do, they're almost instantly punished by the boogeyman. Also talked about in the piece is how we've seen the summer camp horror motif slip away a little bit in more recent times. So with exceptions. And they note 2015's The Final Girls and Fear Street 1978, which came out in 2021. And for the record, I thought Fear Street 1978 was brilliantly done. It was honestly my favorite of the trilogies, of the movies in that trilogy. And that's obviously because of the nostalgic trip that it takes you down. But I would argue, because I know that Fear Street 1978 was beloved by a lot of people who watched that trilogy when it came out in 2021. So I would argue that there's absolutely still an appetite for summer camp horror. And so I'm strongly advocating for a resurgence of summer camp horror. And I think we're seeing pockets of that. We've seen bursts of that in recent years. We'll get to that later on in the cocktail hour. But I think we need more. Let's see more. There's also an argument to be made, in my opinion, that certain elements of Stranger Things evoke summer camp horror. And not just because of the time setting, but the remoteness of the location, the ample wooded areas that the characters frequently find themselves in, the sense that these kids are always just enough apart from civilization and society that they often have to problem solve on their own, but yet still close enough that every now and then you get bumbling local authorities step in and try to intervene. So those are all kind of elements of, according to Muir in the piece, all elements of summer camp horror. The article addresses the issue of perhaps the slippage of summer camp horror in the stratosphere lately, addresses it with this, this is one of the points it closes on, saying that maybe the reason we've seen summer camp horror fade away is that summer camps just aren't seen as so scary anymore. I don't think that's true, but particularly measured up against the world's far scarier threats out there today. And yes, sure, of course. But also, and these are just my 2 cents, summer camp is a bit of escapism. And while you will always hear me talk up the value of real world horror depicted in art mediums, in this case, film. I'm a huge fan of that. And I'm a huge fan of it in books too. I equally support escapism in our art. And like I said, up at the top of this hour, summer camp horror feels fun. It's just fun. And it feels like something that doesn't require a ton of brain work at the end of the day. So that has value also, in my opinion, particularly when measured up against those far scarier threats that we're facing today. don't sit out on summer camp horror just because it's not as scary as real life. A lot of things aren't as scary as real life right now, but that doesn't mean we don't need them in our stories. There's also a really great article that I mentioned that I linked for you guys from Screencraft that highlights that horror films are, of course, genre films, and genre films are all about atmosphere. The when and where a story takes place is just as important as the feeling that it creates. For many of us, the woods are scary. Like Muir says in the previous piece, isolated out from the urban areas that we may otherwise inhabit, being pulled out of that and thrown into a area of seclusion immediately causes unease for many of us. On that note, I would like to share with you a little tale of when my husband and I got married. We went on our honeymoon. We went on like a trip that involved very outdoorsy dude, that one. We went on one of those honeymoons where it's a lot of hiking, a lot of us with boots on and backpacks and water and granola bars and all kinds of crap. And so the first leg of the honeymoon was us sort of in urban environment, enjoying everything that the city has to offer. The middle portion of the honeymoon was the most terrifying, and we'll get to that. And then the third portion was us at the beach, where I was probably my most relaxed and my most happy. I was also happy in the urban area too. Where I was the most stressed out was when we got to the countryside of where we were. At the time, terrifying. I could look at it now and be completely, I can appreciate what that was better. Maybe. I don't know. I watch a lot of true crime, so maybe not. But like at the time, all I could think about the entire week that we were, or however long we were there in that countryside portion of the trip, all I could think about was like, man, this is how those stories start. The young, lovely, newly married couple goes out on their honeymoon and then never seen again. So yeah, causes unease. And you can see why, absolutely, from an atmospheric point of view, again, summer camp horror films are so easy to tap into and enjoy because it really does hit a fear point for many of us. And I just shared why. You're also talking about putting a story in an environment where creepy campfire tales are already a thing, have already been a thing. And so, again, that recipe for a horror story was always there in the context of that. And so I think it took a little bit of the, and Jonathan Kenneth Muir says as much in the piece as well, the previous piece. I think it kind of took a rebel yell mentality that was so pervasive in the 80s to maybe tap into what was already there on the page, so to speak, when it comes to camping and elements for horror. Also, when you get into like, urban legends and folk horror and things that sort of tap into, and we'll get to this too in this next point that I have, tap into the abuse and appropriation of indigenous traditions, lore, and culture. One thing that real present day summer camps, actual summer camps, are finally beginning to confront and reckon with is the oftentimes blatant abuse and appropriation of indigenous traditions, including indigenous names. And that's an important point to make because in various summer camp horror films of the 80s, we have story elements that simply have not aged well, would not age well, and would not be acceptable by today's scale, rightly so. So I do have an article, and I think this one I may have found after the fact, guys, so I will be sure to send that on to you afterwards, but I do have an article from The Guardian that speaks more to the actual summer camps out there in North America, North America, which includes Canada, that are grappling with these realities. And some of them are stepping up and addressing this, some of them not so much. So the Guardian article came out in 2022, and it mentioned a camp up in Waterloo, Canada, that underwent a name change after receiving requests from a local Indigenous community there. In 2021, Camp Iroquois in New York changed its name to Camp Evergreen. But worth noting, the article mentions that many camps are still slow to catch on to this, either intentionally or, I don't know. It's 2025. There's no excuse. It says we still have many accredited summer camps that dress their campers in Native American outfits and split kids up into what they call tribes, often using names like Cherokee, Apache, and Comanche. Using the word tribe is not appropriate. And so certainly using like actual names of indigenous tribes is not okay. That link is not in what you guys received earlier today because I located it later on in the day. So I'm going to get that to you after the live stream is over. Hang on, let me get a sip. I just dripped. That's fine. I shall now take you through a quick list of best summer slashers that are not Friday the 13th as pulled together by the good folks over at CBR.com. And that is a link that you guys did get today. So 10 films that are not Friday the 13th that you can put on your watch list to usher you into summer. At number 10, we have 2014's Stage Fright. For the folks who love comedy, horror, and musicals, in Stage Fright, the summer camp gets a little more niche, being a dedicated musical theater camp. The premise of this is that 10 years after the murder of her Broadway icon mother, the heroine in this movie takes on a lead role at a theater camp. And the kicker, the role is the same role her mother performed right before she was murdered. Of course, the past comes to haunt her, and the blood starts flowing as the camp works to put on the play. I full disclosure, I haven't seen this one. I hadn't even heard of this one. So it sounds like a blast. I would definitely be all in for this kind of movie. I love a horror musical. I personally don't think we have enough. Number 9 is 1981's Mad Men. Mad Men is what happens when campfire horror tales come to life. So the Mad Men, which came out in 1981. I can't remember if I said that. I may have just said that. But you've got Madman Mars, who is kind of a Cropsey-esque figure. And as a matter of fact, I think that is the origin story for what was the inspiration for this film, was the Legend of Cropsey. So yeah, that's definitely a summer camp movie to put on your list. Number 8 is 2018's You Might Be the Killer, which is another horror comedy starring Allison Hannigan and Keith David as Sheriff James. So Ronnie loves horror comedies. I love horror comedies too. I think they're great. Sometimes I just want to be good and scared, but sometimes, that especially for this particular offshoot, summer camp horror is so easily comedic, so it's fun to play with it and have fun with it and make it funny. And then number 7, we've got 2022's She Came from the Woods, which I haven't seen, but it sounds like a return to form of the 80s slashers of yore. This is also listed as a horror comedy. It stars Cara Buono, hopefully I'm saying that right, who's been around for freaking ever. And I started tracking her with Mad Men. She was in Mad Men, and then she's in Stranger Things. She's Mike and Nancy's mother. That's number 7. She Came from the Woods, 2022. Number 6, Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight, which came out in 2020. And this is a Polish film. I think this film is interesting because it's able to channel a little of the old style format in that it sounds like this is a camping scenario where the kids are going to a no-tech camp. So no cell phones, no social media. All of that is forbidden while they're there. So in that sense, it's kind of evoking an 80s horror setting that we would see in like an 80s summer camp movie. Moving on, we have number 5, 1981's The Burning, which is a classic tale of a grumpy loner, some punk kids, and a thirst for vengeance. The Burning stars, as some of you may know, a young Jason Alexander and a very young Holly Hunter, as well as Fisher Stevens. Number 4 is a film I've been trying to watch since the start of Don't Watch at Night, and I can't find the damn movie ever anywhere, but it's my unicorn at this point. The movie is 2015's Summer Camp. That's the name of it, Summer Camp. It's a Spanish film that combines that summer camp element with a contagion of some kind, from my understanding. So it follows a group of American counselors at a European summer camp. Things start to take an unsettling turn when a rage-inducing plague infects the animals in the woods. No, I haven't seen this one. Yes, I desperately want to. I hope to at some point. That's a movie that I've been trying to get for like Veronica and I to do an episode on, and it just hasn't come to fruition. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, I want to do it in the summer because it's a summer camp movie. Maybe this will be the summer. There's still time. Maybe we can figure it out. So what did I say? That's number 4. That's high on the list. So here we go. Let me take a sip, and then we'll get to number 3. I'm interested to know what you think number 3 might be, what the top 3 would be, because I wasn't surprised at number 1 at all, but I was surprised what makes out the top 3. So at number 3, we have 2015's The Final Girls, which I have seen. It's so much fun. This was another horror comedy, and it starred, I don't know, I'm the Farmiga sister, the young one, Taissa, American Horror Story girl, lovely, great actress. Stars her, Malin Ackerman, Nina Dobrev, Thomas Middleditch, Adam Devine, just a bunch of people. Number 2, Fear Street 1978. I'm hardly surprised. I truly love it. I thought they did such a phenomenal job. So this was part 2. For those of you who maybe didn't see it, this was part 2 in the Fear Street trilogy that came out in 2021. And it stars Sadie Sink of Stranger Things fame. And like I said, I think it was the best, in my opinion, of the 3. And that's cutting it close because I loved all of them, to be perfectly honest. And I've rewatched them in the years since. Side note, I just watched Fear Street Prom Queen, and I've seen mixed reviews on it online. I've seen that not everybody loves it. I liked it. I had a fun time with it. Did I love it as much as this trilogy? No. Like, it didn't elicit the same sense of excitement that the trilogy did. But I liked it fine. I enjoyed it. It was a fun watch, and I would watch it again easily. And that's the thing that I want to say about the Fear Street movies. I'm so glad that they're making them. Again, that's another piece of nostalgia from my childhood. I read the Fear Street books, had so many Fear Street books. So I'm so happy they're making those movies, and I hope they'll keep doing it. And then number 1, hold on 1 second. Guesses, feel free to make them. Number 1, to wrap us up, is 1983's Sleepaway Camp, which I don't think anyone should be surprised by. This is often referred to as the seminal summer camp slasher movie. This is what the article says. With bloody kills and a twist reminiscent of William Castle's 1961 Homicidal, it keeps viewers guessing while mixing red herrings with cryptic flashbacks. And honestly, like when I was writing up my notes for this, I was just like, I don't even know what could be said about this movie at this point that hasn't already been said. The big reveal at the end is fantastic. It's fitting that Sleepaway Camp is number 1. Put that on your summer viewing list if you haven't already. I will tell you, this isn't part of my notes, but I will tell you, interestingly enough, considering how much I love summer camp horror, I never did. I never went to summer camps. I was a counselor. I did do that. I have had that experience. When I was in college, I was a summer camp counselor, specifically a dance specialist at a summer camp. And it was a harrowing experience, and I don't recommend. I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't fun, but could I have done without it? Yes, absolutely. You could skip that and be fine. So if you've never done summer camps, you've not missed out on anything. If you've never worked at a summer camp, you've not missed out on anything. That's my I guess like connection to summer camp horror, is that I have been a camp counselor and I wouldn't do again. So that's that on that. I'm so happy that I got to talk to you about this today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I am a child of summer. My birthday's next week. Gemini season. Welcome to my season, babe. It's crazy in here and we're having a blast. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's because I'm a child of summer that I just gravitate towards summer horror films, summer camp horror in particular. I just think that's so fun, and I always want to dive into that. Okay, friends, that's going to wrap it up for us today. I hope you enjoyed this. Do remember that if you want to be part of Creepy Cocktail Hour, if you want to be part of book club discussions that happen on the side of actual book club episodes, if you want to be part of being able to throw in recommendations for movies that we do episodes on or books that we read in the future, then please go join us on Patreon. It is free to join. You can also, if Patreon's not your jam, you can go follow us over on YouTube. We do have a little community over there that is growing, and so we would love to have you over there as well. You'll get the occasional creepy cocktail hour over there. You get the occasional video episode and live stream show that we do. But if you want to get all of that stuff and never have to wonder about it, never have to worry about it, then go find us over on Patreon. Do remember that this summer we have chosen our book club reading for Don't Watch at Night. We're going to be reading The Haunting of Alejandra by V. Castro, and we've got a book club discussion episode coming for you, hunting you down later this summer. All right, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you again next time. Bye.
Don't Watch at Night is a Nest production. Executive producers are Valerie and me. Editing by Valerie. Music by Omar Chakor. Special thanks to Lorenzo Villarreal and Alex Street for production support for this episode. Listen to any new episodes every other Monday, and if you like our show, give us a rate and a review to help us grow.